Narmaya's jumping heavy and jumping unique on her free flutter stance have had their startup reduced. Heavy is no longer 12 frames, but is instead 9. And her jumping U is now 7 frames instead of 9. This is how they looked and behaved in the old patch. And this is the new patch. This makes them overall a little more usable, in my opinion, for jump-ins, air-to-airs, and other outcomes like that. Narmaya's special move, Setsuna, has effectively been reworked. It used to have different attributes depending on the range that you use it at. Up close, you could get a launch. Whereas at a distance, you didn't, and you also got less damage for it. Now, all versions of Setsuna behave the same regardless of range it connects at. We'll go over each of the versions of this independently now. For light Setsuna on hit, this is a buff. It now always knocks down and does 900 damage regardless of the range. This means that Narmaya can use this fast poke in neutral, and if it hits, she's able to close the distance and gain a little more advantage on the opponent. The block stun has also been increased. Before, it was negative 12 on block. Now, it's negative 8. Again, this means it's safer for her to throw out. To compensate for the new rewards it gets, it is now air blockable. Additionally, the mid-air unrecoverable duration has been adjusted. This was the duration before. Very negligible. The medium version of Setsuna now has different properties as well. For starters, the foe will always fall backwards on hit. Again, she's able to cover ground this way, potentially get links as well. On counter hit, the opponent is crumpled. This means that Narmaya could close the gap with either her running speed or any of her special moves to pick up big combos from this. Courtesy of Hyper Revision on Twitter, this is an example of some high damage links that you can get with the new 236M. $8,000 damage from a fireball poke in mid-screen. That's pretty impressive stuff for Narmaya to have right now. The medium version doesn't have any property changes now with the charge. Effectively, this just uses a mind game for the opponent as to when you release Setsuna. On block, it's still plus 10. The pushback's been adjusted, and I think it pushes the opponent farther away now. Hard to say. The heavy version of Setsuna sees a couple of changes, an alternation between buffs and nerfs. On hit, it's been buffed. It now causes wall bounce at any range. As you can see, in the previous patch, it didn't have that property before, but it did have another advantage. On block, it was plus 2. Here's how it looks in the current patch. On hit, you don't get the wall bounce in mid-screen, but near the corner, if she's spaced out far away, you still get a wall bounce, which opens up some combo possibilities for her. In return for this, though, it's now negative 2 on block, so you can't take your turn again with this option. Courtesy of M. Khalil ESA on Twitter, we're able to kind of give a demonstration of a practical application of the new EX Setsuna buff. As you can see, with the new wall bounce that she gets at range with EX Setsuna, she's able to link into higher damage combo routes from mid-screen and into the corner. This is great for her. The ultimate version of Transient has been adjusted. It now automatically goes into attack after moving. Before, if you didn't do anything, you just had this side swap. But now you get this attack. It's a good chunk of damage for a single hit, but you're not able to really get any links off of it, it seems like. You are plus 44, so at the very least, you're going to get a safe jump opportunity here with Narmaya. The next change applies to all forms of transient into follow-up skills. The input window for follow-up skills has been increased. I'm not going to really be able to demonstrate this live for you all here, so we're just going to have to appreciate it as Narmaya players experiment with it. The ultimate version of Kyokasui Getsu has its pushback on block for the 3rd and 4th hit reduced. All this is just to let Narmaya be closer so she can get punished properly. This was how it looked before. The grounded form of her crescent moves have all been adjusted. The light version have received a couple of buffs. The startup has been reduced from 32 frames to 27 frames. The falling speed has been increased, so she reduces her landing time. And the recovery from landing has been reduced by a single frame. Let's compare the situations on hit and on block between the two patches. And here's what it looks like now. The properties are pretty much identical except for the reduced startup. The medium version of Crescent Moon no longer causes a ground bounce. You are able to link a close light triple attack sequence from this hit now, but considering that this is a 42 frame cross up in a game with a block button, I don't know if you're ever going to be really reaping the benefits from this. That said, against airborne opponents, if you get a counter hit, you now have a ground bounce. So while you are able to get more reward in this context, I don't know how match practical this actually is. The heavy Crescent Moon version also sees the same changes as the medium one. The grounded version no longer ground bounces. You are able to link a close medium slash here. But unlike the medium one, you also get the same ground bounce on any anti-air, not just on a counter hit. This I can see being a little more practical. Of course, the primary use of Crescent Moon in high-level play with Narmaya has been as a means to use it as a shimmy against throws with the built-in auto-time punish. Check out the damage you can get here, courtesy of the GOAT himself, K-Tang. The Ultimate version had a change where its lower hitbox was shortened to prevent hitting crossovers. Not sure how often this is going to come up in an actual match, though. The airborne version of Medium Crescent Moon has a couple of changes to it as well. The recovery when landing has been increased from 3 frames to 12 frames. The whiff recovery when landing has been increased from 6 frames to 12 frames. And the behavior on block and hit has changed, all with the purpose of that now it is going to be easier to combo on hit, but it will be easier to get punished on block. We'll go ahead and just run through these changes with visual examples. This is going to be the old patch version. That was the light version, my mistake. That's the medium version. Let's take a look at it now in the current patch. It says there's combo potential here, but I haven't been able to find a link with it just yet, even with switching some stances. Here is how it looks on block. As you can see, you swap sides with the opponent, but you're now also negative 15, which means you're likely eating a heavy punish starter. It's also been buffed as an air-to-air option, doubling the hit stun it has against mid-air opponents. This one certainly has more combo potential here. This would be an example of what you can do with medium aerial Crescent Moon now in terms of your combo routing, courtesy of Dios0808 on Twitter. There's some flashy stuff happening here. Keeping in mind that Narmaya typically uses any versions of her Crescent Moon as a built-in throw shimmy, where she's going to be able to get a counter hit punch starter on someone who tries to manually take a throw when she runs up to them. I think these changes are more than justified. It's interesting that they targeted the Tiger Knee version of Crescent Moon mid-air to make it better on hit, yet incredibly so much more worse on block. It's almost like they're trying to force you, or at least encourage you, to use the grounded versions instead of that one. The last change to go over with Narmaya is her butterfly effect. She's now able to change stance as during the animation of a counter hit. This will help her get to more optimal starters. She can also do this during a Brave counter. These changes seem to be in line with trying to make Narmaya a little easier for players to use. She's difficult to pick up as it is, having 2 different sets of cooldowns as well as normals that you have to keep track of at any given moment without a real indicator on the screen outside of her own standing animation with how she holds her sword and what stance that you're in. So streamlining some of her tools to behave the same regardless of the condition does mean that she can be a little easier to pick up and manage overall. I think there's a couple of buffs in here while also a couple of targeted nerfs. This kind of feels more like a lateral movement on a tier list rather than a strictly vertical or horizontal one. We'll see what Narmaya players are able to develop with her going forward.